I'm delivering my annual Buffalo Bills mock offseason today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. It is time for one of my favorite annual episodes, my Bills mock offseason. So we're going on a journey. We're going to create the cap space. We're going to deal with expiring contracts. We're going to sign outside free agents. We're doing a 7-round mock draft. And at the end of this, you'll have a roster projection. Now, look, this is not necessarily intended to be predictive. I want to show you a path, show you what can be accomplished by Brandon Beane this offseason, give you an idea, right, of the possibilities. And this really combines my favorite parts of being an NFL analyst, where I get to do the whole team building thing. And I understand that I have a unique advantage. I'm not really competing against the other 31 teams for players. I'm pretty much just picking exactly what I want. So there's a unique advantage that I have, but nonetheless, a fun experiment, a good thought exercise, and hopefully something that can give you a good idea as to what the Bills can get done. Now, one thing that I always do is my work is checked by the great Greg Thompson. He's with Cover One. He does a great job with salary cap analysis, and he's went through all of my numbers. He makes sure that they're correct and says, Joe, yes, you can do that. That adds up, and that's an important layer as a checks and balance. So, I'm not just going crazy, doing things that can actually happen. So let's do it. I'm going to fit it all into one episode. So we're going to move fast and buckle up. Step one, we got to create some cap space. The Bills are entering this offseason over the salary cap, and that number, according to Spot Rack, is $9.6 million over the cap. So we got to create some cap space to become cap compliant, and we need to have some money so we can spend it and add some players to this roster. And so we're going to do the following moves to create cap space. We're giving out some contract extensions. The first one to Josh Allen. And we don't have to talk about the details in terms of how long or how much, right? I'm sure it'll be north of $60 million a season. But here's what's most important for the sake of this. By extending Josh Allen's contract, we free up $11.8 million. So we take care of Josh Allen, we get cap space. It's a win all the way around. We're also extending the contract of Greg Rousseau. And by doing so, we will free up $9.8 million in cap space. I'm sure that deal will come in something like 4 years, $100 million. And because he's playing on that hard fifth-year option of $13.4 million, gives us a great opportunity to reduce that and create cap space now and lock in Greg Rousseau for a number of years. We're also extending the contract of Connor McGovern, Bills starting center, a great success story with him as a free agent signing, then moving to center, looking like the answer. We're going to go ahead and extend him, and that'll get us $4.2 million in cap space. So we are extending Josh Allen, Greg Rousseau, and Connor McGovern as players that do not have expiring contracts, but we can take their salary for 2025, reduce it down a little bit, spread it throughout the course of the deal, and get some cap space. We are going to release a player and create cap space, and that player is Von Miller. Von Miller can be released for a savings of $8.4 million. That's what we're doing. I know the Bills can do a renegotiated contract with him where you keep Von Miller and you still have the same amount of cap savings. We want to get younger, right? I want to give that money to somebody else and not rely on a 36-year-old pass rusher. We're also going to restructure 3 contracts. We're going to restructure Ed Oliver for $8.7 million, Deion Dawkins for $9.8 million, and Dawson Knox. That's going to get us $6.3 million in cap space. So after we do all of that, we start at minus 9.6. After those moves, bada bing, bada boom. We're sitting here with $49.3 million in available cap space. That's a great spot to be. Now we got to spend some money. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to handle our own expiring contracts. There's 5 players I want the Bills to re-sign. And player 1 is Ty Johnson. We're bringing him back on a 2-year, $6 million contract. Got to make sure we have as Josh Allen says, the best third down back in football. Bring this guy back. He blocks, he catches it, he can kick return, inside, outside runner, trusted guy. Welcome back on a 2-year, $6 million deal. We're also extending or re-signing Reggie Gilliam, the fullback. We got a good fullback that plays special teams, that handles the blocking. We're not messing with that. Welcome back, Reggie Gilliam, 2 years, $5.5 million. Mac Hollins, welcome back. We're re-signing him to a 1-year, $3 million deal. Of course, the versatility, right? Big-bodied player that can play special teams, that can block, that can occasionally catch a pass for you. Good locker room guy. He is back. We're also bringing back Quentin Morris on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. Tight end 3 does a nice job for this team. Seemingly makes one crazy clutch touchdown catch every single year and has been a core special teamer for this team as well. 4-face special teamer. We're bringing him back on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. We're also going to re-sign our long snapper, Reed Ferguson, 2 years, $3 million. He's a good long snapper. There's no reason to mess with that. We're keeping him in Buffalo. And so Ty Johnson, Reggie Gilliam, Mac Hollins, Quentin Morris, Reed Ferguson, the players that I want to extend that are expiring contracts. And so that means I'm letting everyone else walk. Amari Cooper, Rasul Douglas, DeMar Hamlin, Austin Johnson, DeJuan Smoot, all of those guys. Thanks for everything, and best of luck on your next contract. So that is the internal moves. Coming up next, we are signing outside free agents. I got some big ticket guys I want to bring onto this roster. I'll break that down for you here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for cats and dogs. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. Auto ship, folks, that's a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so that you never run out. You can easily change or cancel those at any time. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, folks, let's add some players to this roster. We're going to sign 5 outside free agents, and then we'll do the 7-round mock draft. And obviously, I've communicated the needs that I think are most important on this team: receiver, defensive end, defensive tackle, cornerback. And so, well, that'll be a big theme of how I try to address this roster. Of course, I'm looking for upside. I'm looking for value. And I'm also aware that I can't get a big ticket thing at every single position, right? I can't go out and make splash after splash after splash. So in some areas, I was able to get a big answer. In some areas, I'm kind of betting on a trajectory of a player that has shown some promise that I think the Bills can, in the Buffalo Bills ecosystem, unlock more of what that player has to offer. And so that's what's definitely on my mind. Now, look, one thing that I didn't do is I didn't make any trades. I didn't trade for Myles Garrett. I didn't trade for DK Metcalf. And I would love for the Bills to do those things. You know, I'm not sitting here saying this is the only thing that would make me happy. I think the Bills should be very aggressive and firmly in the mix to acquire those players. But what I like about what I'm doing here is I didn't do those things. And so I can show you a path where, hey, maybe you're sitting back and hoping that the Bills make one of those trades. If it doesn't happen, hopefully you can see, well, it'll be okay. There's other ways to get this done. So let's sign some outside free agents. And if you've listened to the last couple of days, you know that I'm going to sign the guys that I told you were my favorite options. And so let's start with the big move, and that's going to be signing Josh Sweat, defensive end from the Philadelphia Eagles. We're signing him to a 3-year, $60 million deal that puts him over right at $20 million a season. The projections from SpotRack and PFF are coming in at about 18.5 million. We'll go ahead and bump that up to the $20 million range and get ourselves an answer at defensive end. I watched the tape on Josh Sweat, and I loved it. He's got length, he's got size, he's got explosiveness, he's got flexibility, he's got a wide range of pass rush moves. He's been durable. I'm a big fan of his game, and I think Philly's just kind of in a tough spot with all their expiring contracts, all their expensive players. You know, they can't keep everyone, and if he hits the market, the Bills got to find a way to get that one done, especially if they don't trade for Myles Garrett. This is the big ticket defensive end that I hope the Buffalo Bills acquire. Just watch the tape. Just watch the tape. He can ball. He can absolutely ball. So that's our big ticket move at defensive end. We'll sign another defensive lineman. You know that I like Dietrich Wise from the New England Patriots. 6'5", 280 pounds, over 35-inch arms. And the Bills love having a defensive end that can reduce inside and rush. And that's exactly what Dietrich Wise can give the Bills. Really quality run defense, but also in those NASCAR packages when you want to go with, a little bit of a lighter front to get after the quarterback, Dietrich Wise absolutely can do that. And in more of an up the field penetration style defense, I'm excited to see what he can do, where that's not really what he's asked to do in New England. It's a lot of, hey, control your gap, play with extension, let the second level come downhill. And while that's still important at times for Buffalo, there's a lot more freedom to get up the field. And I think that could unlock even more playmaking from Dietrich Wise, who I think has been a really strong player in the NFL. So we got us a big-time pass rusher. We got us a really important rotational piece, Dietrich Wise, coming to Buffalo on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Let's make another move for this defensive line. Let's get us a defensive tackle. I've told you all about Bobby Brown from the Rams. We're signing him to a 2-year, $7 million contract. He's been mostly a run stuffer for the Rams, but I think there's a lot to unlock as a pass rusher. He's got an RAS score of over a 9 and has a lot of movement skills. He's not just a big-bodied guy that just eats space in the middle of the defense. There's legitimate ability to penetrate and get on the other side of the line of scrimmage and not just be a fire hydrant against the run. And so, when I think about free agents that I would want to bring in, it's usually, were there reasons at the previous spot that maybe, you didn't get to be the full player that you can be, or you're buried behind some really good players that, didn't give you a chance to come in and play. I think there's some of all of that with Bobby Brown, where there's been a lot of turnover with that defensive coaching staff. And they've certainly drafted a lot of players along that defensive line. And if Bobby Brown hits the market, boy, he's one of my favorite value signings that the Bills can make. So Bobby Brown coming in to be part of our nose tackle solution. So defensive line, Josh Sweat, Dietrich Wise, Bobby Brown. We need a corner, right? We got to get a cornerback. How about Chavarius Ward from the 49ers? I love him. I think he's such a good player. Like I said yesterday when previewing the cornerback class, my comp for Christian Benford has been Chavarius Ward. And I think Ward has been a very steady player. He's been durable. And what I love about Chavarius Ward is not only has he been a great performer with ball skills, versatility with how he can cover, good tackler. This is a guy that's got a ton of playoff experience, 17 playoff starts. He had a stretch of like 5 years in a row where he played in at least 3 playoff games. And then the year prior was 2. I mean, this guy knows exactly what it's like to play on a team that goes on deep postseason runs. And I think he'd be a wonderful answer opposite of Christian Benford. We're signing him on a 2-year, $30 million deal. And then we will get some help for the offense here as well. The receiver I want. It's Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer on a 2-year, $10 million deal coming over from the Chargers. He's got good size, over 6 foot, around 200 pounds. He's a route winner, right? That's what the Bills need more than anything, a guy that can win routes. And so I shared with you the other day some of the metrics from the Fantasy Points data suite on his route win rate. And amongst the 141 receivers that ran at least 100 routes last year, 5th highest win rate beating man coverage, 10th beating zone. And, he's mostly an outside player, and his route win rates are both in the top 10 from outside alignments and slot alignments. He blocks like crazy. He doesn't drop anything, like just a very complete player that can play special teams. He can do all the stuff that you're looking for. And so, like I've said, I don't think the Bills need a guy that's going to come in and get 100, 120 targets. I think they need a piece that can come in and be a route winner that's going to make teams uncomfortable playing as much man coverage against the Bills. And so, if they're going to go with the bargain player at receiver, Josh Palmer definitely is a player that is high on my radar for the Buffalo Bills to add at receiver. And so he'll come in and be part of the mix with Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. So those are my 5 free agent signings that I'm making, which gets us to the NFL draft. And based on what we've done to this point, I'm going into this draft thinking I want more at defensive tackle, I want more at receiver, and I want some depth in the secondary, right? We need a 4th safety, if you will, because we do have Cam Lewis. I want a developmental option at corner where, Kyer Elam's probably his last year in Buffalo. I want to have something in place where I feel like I have a developmental option that has starter traits. Those are the things that are weighing on my mind. The other thing that's on my mind is roster ability of rookies. And I went through and I, kind of as I did this project, I'm looking at the roster, it's taking shape. I can only roster 53 players. And as I'm doing this, I'm just becoming more and more aware that I don't have room to roster like 10 rookies. So what I did is I traded some picks and I did some moving up the board. That way I can get targets that I really liked and not be stuck with a bunch of rookies that I don't have anywhere to roster. And so that was a big part of my thought process entering this mock draft. I used the PFF mock draft simulator to do this, and this is how it came out. With pick 30 in the first round, we went with Darius Alexander, defensive tackle from Toledo. Boy, do I love his tape. He's extremely athletic, stout against the run. He has a lot of different ways that he can beat blocks, plays with a ton of urgency, and he's a guy that you watch this Toledo front, and he's the guy that they're trying to block, right? 2-3 guys on every play, and he's still very, very disruptive. And I just think there's a lot of ceiling there. And one of my favorite players that I've watched, he's not going to be a top 10 pick, but sometimes you just watch players and you just really love everything about the way they play. He checks all the boxes in terms of size and athleticism. I think he's a high floor player as well, which is kind of different, right? The Bills have typically drafted a lot of really toolsy guys, but have a lot of untapped potential. I think this is a toolsy player that's coming in with a lot of ceiling already. And so I feel good about him being another piece for this defensive line. I want to really fortify the defensive front, and I've been very intentional about doing that. And so we check another box here with pick 30 in the first round. So let's do it again. Second round, pick 56. We're going back to the defensive line. Jared Ivey, defensive end from Ole Miss. I'm a big fan. Bigger guy, right? 280-pound defensive end that, I talked about that Dietrich Wise role. Only a 1-year player for the Bills. I think you look at Jared Ivey as the guy that can step into that for Buffalo and give the Bills an interior pass rusher, a guy that's going to be firm against the run on the outside, has a lot of versatility. Like he even wins from a 2-point stance from sometimes. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage. Think Danico Autry. Think Dayo Adeyingbo in terms of the NFL equivalent to this player. Hard-nosed guy. You read about him, and there's a lot of rave reviews about the character and leadership. I think he just absolutely fits in a big way. Then with our other second-round pick, number 62, we're going to get a receiver. We're going Jalen Knoll out of Iowa State. Explosive, right? You want explosive speed? Here you go. 4.39. He's 5'10", 194 pounds. A lot of deep vertical production, right? This is the stuff we're talking about. He's got a big profile as a kick returner as well. And so big plays, explosiveness, field stretcher. We get it right here in Jalen Knoll, who had a terrific last couple of years at Iowa State. Now we're making some trades up. I thought the sweet spot to move up was going to be in the 3rd and 4th round. And the Bills don't have a 3rd round pick, so I went ahead and traded into the 3rd round. I got to pick 97, and I traded. I think this is with the Minnesota Vikings, a team that doesn't really have much draft capital. So I thought they'd be a logical team. So we're going from 108 to 97, and we're giving up 171 and 205. We're coming up for a safety, Kevin Winston out of Penn State. This dude is a dog, right? Physical, good size, a guy that can really just trigger downhill and tackle. Has not made a ton of plays on the ball, but you can see that reactionary quickness to be able to trigger and work into those throwing lanes. Physical player. At a minimum, I think you have a core special teamer and a nice little hedge as well against whether it's Taylor Rapp or Cole Bishop to give you a player with a lot of upside. He only played in 2 games this past season because he had a partially torn ACL. Last I heard, he was supposed to be cleared in March for on-field drills, so I don't think there's much of a concern that he's going to really miss meaningful time. I think he's already kind of went through his rehab, and he was kind of trending towards top 50 pick, maybe a late 1st round pick. I think you kind of use it to your advantage that he did get injured, and you get him here in the 3rd round as a player with a lot of upside. We also traded up in the 4th round, so we went from 131 to 117, and I gave up 178 to get there. And we're going to pick Dorian Strong, a cornerback out of Virginia Tech, an experienced player in college, good size, very instinctive, good ball production, good tackler, just very Billsy to me. Not an elite athlete, a sufficient athlete, but a guy that I think has a high floor that I think that Sean McDermott can get his hands on him. And, maybe have another Dane Jackson or better type player to round out your cornerback room and give you a guy here that, assuming Kyer Elam is going to be his last year on the team, now you have some developmental appeal behind Chavarius Ward and Christian Benford. And then in the 5th round, pick 175, we're going Jarquez Hunter, a running back out of Auburn, 5'9", 204, runs 4.44, excellent contact balance, over 4 yards after contact per run the last 2 seasons. Rave reviews about his work ethic and leadership, special teams background, right? He's got an explosive, he's explosive, right? You look at all of his jumps and his 40-yard dash, great numbers there. And so you get some speed and you get some physicality out of this player. And, the idea here is if James Cook's going to eventually move on, let's make sure that the stable of backs is full, right? And you really have guys in the pipeline to feel like you're good no matter what happens with the future of the running back position. And then our last picks, 6th round pick 207, we're going CJ Dupree, tight end, Alabama, transferred from Maryland, known for his blocking, right? So he gives you a baseline ability as a blocker. And I think there's a baseline level of receiving talent as well. He's athletic, RAS score of a 9.62, 6'5", 256. You think just kind of do everything tight end, maybe nothing at an overly high level, but, with Quentin Morris on a 1-year deal, and what happened with Armani Rogers, I think you need some type of developmental piece at tight end to give you a cost control option as a tight end 3. So you're not paying that spot $2.5 million. And I think a player like this gives you a chance to have that. So that's the mock draft. 1st round, Darius Alexander, defensive tackle, Toledo. 2nd round pick 56, Jared Ivey, defensive end, Ole Miss. 2nd round pick 62, Jalen Knoll, receiver, Iowa State. 3rd round pick 97, Kevin Winston, safety out of Penn State. 4th round pick 117, Dorian Strong, corner, Virginia Tech. 5th round pick 175, Jarquez Hunter, running back, Auburn. And then 6th round pick 207, CJ Dupree, tight end, Alabama. All right, on the other side of it, we'll look at the entire roster and discuss kind of how I see it playing out based on the moves that I made and give you kind of a 53-man roster projection. Folks, be sure to stick with me. All right, welcome back. So we've done all the things. We've acquired a bunch of players. Now let's really take a look at how this roster shakes out. And So I'm doing a 53-man roster projection, but I actually have 55 players that are going to make the team. But I have 4 players highlighted as, okay, this is where we can make some cuts and also get us some cap space. According to Greg Tomset, after I did all my moves and I signed my draft class, I'm looking at about $5 or $6 million in cap space left. And I can get more cap space based on the decisions that I make, once I figure out the tiebreakers with the 53-man roster. Because, again, I'm going to show you 55 players, but then I'm also going to highlight 4 that will be the pivot points to get us down to 53, but also there's a lot of cap savings to be had along the way. So at quarterback, we'll roster 2 of those, Josh Allen, and then hopefully Mike White. Because if you move on from Mitch Trubisky, you get $2.5 million in cap space. And so I think the Bills need to have a competition there and then make sure that Mike White can win the job. And if Mitch Trubisky wins the job, he has to be $2.5 million in cap savings better than Mike White. And so the hope is that it's Mike White and Josh Allen. That way we can cut Mitch Trubisky and get that $2.5 million. At running back, James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, Reggie Gilliam. We'd love to roster Jarquez Hunter if we can. If not, we'll stash him on the practice squad, but definitely more of a hedge there than anything. And feel good about that running back room returning. I think it was one of the best position groups on the team. Didn't really want to mess with it. At receiver, have 6 of those. Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, and Jalen Knoll. I like the makeup here. We got a really good slot option in Shakir, route winner in Palmer. Keon Coleman is a developmental player. Curtis Samuel's the X factor. Mac Hollins and the Mac Hollins things. And now we got an explosive player as well here in Jalen Knoll. At tight end, I have us rostering 4, and this is where I have one of my green players that, you have a pivot point. Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Quentin Morris, and then the draft pick, CJ Dupree. And then I think, look, maybe this is it for Quentin Morris, where if you like it enough of what you see out of Dupree or Zach Davidson, you can move on from Quentin Morris and then maybe have a more cost-controlled guy in that tight end 3 spot. At offensive line, we're not changing a thing. The same 9 players from last year are back. Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance Brown as the starters. Your depth, Tylen Grable, Ryan Vandemark, Alec Anderson, and Cedric Van Pran Granger. At defensive end, I have 6 down. There's a pivot point here as well. Greg Rousseau and Josh Sweat are our starters. Dietrich Wise, the free agent signing. AJ Epinesa, Jared Ivey, the second-round pick, and Javon Solomon. If we like what we see out of Wise and Ivey, then AJ Epinesa is a player that you can move on from, and you can, clear some cap space, over $3 million in cap space. So, let it play out. And if you feel like you can move on from Epinesa, go ahead and do it. And there's another opportunity to get cap space. So, between Trubisky and Epinesa, there's another $5-6 million. At defensive tackle, 5 of those. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Bobby Brown, the free agent signing, Darius Alexander, our first-round pick, and Dwayne Carter. And again, I'd say if you need to get you can get cap space and a roster spot from Daquan Jones. If you like what you see from Bobby Brown and Darius Alexander, you can certainly go that route. Don't have to, but an option. At linebacker, same 5 as last year. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, Joe Andreessen, Edifon Ulafosio. In this scenario, we are moving on from Balin Spector. He can come back on the practice squad, but not committing a roster spot to him. At corner, have 6 of those. Christian Benford, Chavarius Ward, Taron Johnson, Kyer Elam, Dorian Strong, the draft pick, and Jamarcus Ingram. Kyer Elam's another pivot player. If you like what you see from Dorian Strong and you're comfortable with Jamarcus Ingram, well, then Kyer Elam's a player that you can trade and get some cap space. And you probably won't get much in a trade. You might be, Kyer Elam and a 6 for a 5, something like that. But the real benefit would be able to get cap space. You won't get any cap space by cutting him. So that's really not a path. Then at safety, we have 4 of those. Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop, Cam Lewis, Kevin Winston, our draft pick. And then our specialists, Tyler Bass, Sam Martin, Reed Ferguson, Brandon Codrington. And so that's 55 players. But again, between AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones, Kyer Elam, and Quentin Morris, you can easily get 2 roster spots and also save some cap space. So there you have it. My mock off season. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment here if you're on the YouTube channel. Let me know if you take this or you rather have whatever Bean does. But this is what you have in hand with what I put together. So keep that in mind. I really like it. I'd be very satisfied with this. What I really love is that I feel like I addressed the biggest needs. I feel like I've infused the defensive end and defensive tackle room with meaningful young talent, veterans, both veterans and draft capital, upside plays as well with the Bobby Brown. I love getting Chavarius Ward to go with Christian Benford. I think that's comfortably the best corner tandem we've seen in Buffalo under Sean McDermott. I'm happy with, I didn't get a major player at receiver. I didn't do that. I didn't bring in Devontae Adams or trade for DK Metcalf, but I think Josh Palmer's a really good fit. I got speed in Jalen Knoll, and I like the idea of just kind of building with Shakir and Coleman. And I think a lot of Kincaid. Like, you have to keep that in mind in this overall conversation, is that I'm not out on Dalton Kincaid in any way, shape, or form. I think very highly of him as a meaningful piece of this offense. And so I like how this came together. I got a decent amount of cap space in hand, based on the pivot points that I highlighted with the 53-man roster projection. We could be staring at $8 to $12 million in cap space during the season. So if we need to bring in a player, we've got the flexibility to do it. So worst case scenario, you roll it over to 2026. I feel like this is a good situation that I've created. So we'll see what Bean does. Things are heating up in the NFL. I mean, every time you go to the Twitter machine, it's like something's happened, right? Players are becoming available. Players are getting cut, extensions. So it's going to be quite the next few weeks on the podcast as we talk about all of it from a Bills perspective. So folks, don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.